All right, let's dive in. Today we're looking at 65 Happiness by Matthieu Ricard,
Oh, this one's
a
great.
guide to developing, as he puts it, life's most important skill.
Life's most important skill.
Yeah.
And it is a skill.
That's right. Happiness, he says,
Mm-hmm.
is a skill, not just something,
It's very much a feeling.
yeah, like a feeling that you just
Exactly.
happen to have or,
Right.
based on circumstance, but an actual skill that can be developed, like
Like learning a
or
language.
learning an instrument,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
speaking another language. Yeah.
You practice it, you get better at it.
And that's a pretty bold claim, right?
It is. It is.
But he's got a pretty unique background to be able to make such a claim. He's a
Well, he's a molecular biologist turned Buddhist monk.
That's right.
So he's got the science, the mind,
Yeah.
the background, and the personal experience too.
Yeah. So let's dive into it. Like,
Yeah.
how does he even begin to back this up? This idea that happiness is a skill.
Well, he really kind of starts by looking at the idea that we're not just victims of our emotions.
Okay.
That we're not just,
Yeah.
at the mercy of whatever life throws at us, but we're actually active participants in creating our own happiness.
I see. So it's not just about the external factors that we're
Exactly.
at the whim of.
It's not, oh, I won the lottery, so I'm happy.
Right. Right. Exactly.
I got a promotion, so I'm happy.
Or the opposite. That.
Right. My basement flooded, so I'm unhappy.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
It's like we have some control here.
So it's like taking ownership, kind of
Yeah,
your
exactly. Yeah.
of your own happiness.
And it's like going to the gym,
Yeah.
You don't just wake up one day and you're physically fit.
Right.
You have to, do the exercises, eat healthy,
Put in the work.
you put in the work.
Yeah, you got to put in the work.
The same thing with mental fitness.
Mental fitness, yeah.
I like that. You gotta train the mind.
So what does that look like when we talk about mental fitness?
Well, he gets into the science a little bit
Okay.
and how our thoughts actually shape our reality,
Okay.
And if we're constantly, dwelling on these negative thoughts, like replaying that frustrating event over and over in your mind,
Oh, yeah.
you're actually strengthening those neural pathways.
Right.
Those connections associated with those negative emotions.
Like choosing to suffer almost, even though the original event is over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're reliving it.
Okay, so how do we break free from those loops then? Those negative thought loops?
Well, and that's where meditation comes in.
Okay.
Mindfulness meditation. He
I was
talks
going to say, is that where it comes
Yeah,
into
but
my
it's not
direction?
about
Yeah.
emptying your mind or reaching some sort of blissful state. It's really about training your attention
Right.
to be present
To just be,
and to notice your thoughts
yeah,
and your feelings.
without judgment.
Yeah, without getting carried away by them.
Without.
So you're kind of observing.
Yeah, I like that. It's like instead of being in the storm, you're watching the storm.
You're watching it go by
Yeah.
and you're not getting swept away by it.
Okay, so, but is there actual proof? Like, is there actual, like, scientific evidence?
Yeah.
That actually changes something in us?
He brings in the science.
Okay.
He's not just talking about ancient wisdom here,
Mhm.
He actually cites studies that show that mindfulness meditation can actually increase the activity in the left prefrontal cortex,
Really?
which is the area of the brain that's associated with all those positive emotions,
Wow.
like joy and contentment.
So it's not just
It's not just a concept. It's
I know, it's not just fluffy feel-good stuff. There's actual changes happening.
It's changing your brain.
Yeah. I think I remember in the book he talks about a study where they showed long-term meditators like disturbing images.
Yeah.
And there was way less distress in their brains or activity in their brains compared to people who didn't meditate.
Less activity in the areas associated with stress.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more activity in the areas associated with kind of like equanimity.
Wow. So it's like
That's
building
calmness.
Yeah, like building up resilience almost.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
negative stuff.
Exactly, yeah. It's like you're training your mind.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like a muscle.
And he's not just talking about that though, right? He's talking about compassion and how that plays into happiness too.
He talks about cultivating compassion.
Yeah.
And that feeling of deep empathy and care for others and how that actually makes us happier and also creates kind of like this ripple effect
Okay.
out into the world.
So being kind makes us feel good.
It does. It does.
What's that?
There's a reason for that.
Yeah. What's the science behind that?
Well, when you're focused on helping others, you're less likely to be all caught up in your own problems,
Right.
And there's also,
Yeah.
studies have shown that acts of kindness, even small ones, can boost levels of all those happiness hormones.
Like what?
You know, dopamine and serotonin.
Oh, wow.
So, it's like it's built into us.
It's like a happiness hack.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Wow, this is blowing my mind a little bit. This
Yeah.
is a lot to process
Oh,
already. But what about the more external stuff, like
Yeah.
success and finances and relationships and
like the things we're told, lead to happiness.
right, like don't those contribute too?
Well, that's where it gets, that's where he gets challenging.
Okay.
He argues that our modern obsession with chasing these external things can actually be kind of a major roadblock to true happiness.
Wait, so is he saying we shouldn't strive for any of those things?
Well, no, not necessarily. He's not saying we should give up all of our goals and live like hermits.
Okay.
But,
Okay, so
but
yeah.
he's saying
Yeah.
that if our happiness is entirely dependent on achieving those things,
Ah, okay.
then we're setting ourselves up for a lot of disappointment.
I see. So it's like that. I'll be happy when
Yeah.
I get that promotion or when I buy that house, or
Exactly.
when I find the perfect partner. It's
Yeah.
always like one step away.
Yeah, you're never quite there.
Yeah, and so you never actually arrive
Right.
at the happiness.
And he calls this he calls it the illusion of happiness through external pursuits.
I see.
It's that belief that happiness is something out there
Out there.
that we need to acquire
Yeah.
instead of something that we cultivate within.
Man, it's giving me a lot to think about already.
Yeah.
So how do we break free from that trap,
Uh-huh.
This trap of chasing illusions?
Well, that's where it gets even more interesting, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next part of this deep dive.
Oh, man.
We'll explore how letting go of these illusions can open the door to a deeper and more enduring sense of fulfillment.
All right. I'm hooked. I'm looking forward to it.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive on 65 Happiness.
All right. So last time we were talking about this idea of illusions, these illusions of happiness that
Right.
we're kind of chasing after.
The external pursuits.
Externals.
The stuff. Yeah.
That we think is going to make us happy, but actually
doesn't.
leads to more suffering.
Right. And so what's the alternative? If it's not about achieving more or having more,
Right.
what does Ricard say is the
Well, that's where he talks about this idea of letting go
okay.
these illusions.
The illusions.
Yeah, that we're clinging to these beliefs and these desires that are ultimately just, causing more suffering than happiness.
Okay, so what kind of illusions are we talking about specifically? Well, I mean, one example is this belief that happiness comes from being constantly entertained.
Oh, okay.
Always stimulated.
Yeah.
We're bombarded with information these days.
Constantly.
Social media, got to be doing something exciting all the time.
Yeah, FOMO.
Yeah, exactly. And it leads to this kind of restless dissatisfaction.
Like you're never content with where you're at.
Right. You're always looking for the next dopamine hit.
The next thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so but does being constantly entertained, does that actually make us happier?
Well, I mean, Ricard would say it prevents us from experiencing deeper forms of contentment
Okay.
and peace.
Mhm.
He suggests that true happiness comes from cultivating this sense of inner stillness
Stillness
and simplicity.
not the constant stimulation.
Not the constant, needing to be entertained or
Okay.
have something going on all the time.
So it's like finding joy in these simple things.
Exactly.
A walk in nature,
Yeah. A meaningful conversation.
Spending time with people you care about
Exactly.
without all the bells and whistles.
Without needing all the bells and whistles.
I like that.
And he emphasizes the importance of cultivating qualities like gratitude
Okay.
and compassion and this kind of inner peace.
Right.
And that these are the things that really provide that lasting sense of happiness.
Okay, so these qualities all sound great, but how do we actually cultivate them, It's easy to say be more grateful,
Right.
but how do you actually make that a reality?
Well, he actually offers some specific practices.
Oh, okay.
Techniques,
Yeah.
He talks about mindfulness meditation, which we touched on earlier.
Right.
But he also talks about things like keeping a gratitude journal,
Okay.
practicing acts of kindness,
Okay.
and even cultivating this kind of sense of loving kindness towards yourself and others,
Okay.
you know.
So these all sound pretty straightforward, but I imagine they take
Yes.
some effort
They take effort, yeah.
to actually make them stick.
It's not about magically transforming overnight.
Right.
It's about making these small, consistent efforts over time.
Like any skill.
Like any skill. Exactly.
Yeah.
It takes practice
You got to practice. You got to put in the time.
and patience.
Yeah.
And-
Okay. So if someone was listening and wanted to start incorporating some of these practices,
Yeah.
where would you suggest they begin?
Well, one simple but powerful practice is to just start a gratitude journal.
A gratitude journal. Okay.
Yeah, just like every day, take a few minutes to write down, 3 things
3 things you're grateful for.
that you're grateful for.
Yeah.
And they can be big or small,
Okay.
The key is just to shift your focus
To what you have.
to what's good
Yeah.
rather than dwelling on, what's lacking.
What you don't have.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that.
It's a simple shift, but it's powerful.
And what about compassion? How do we practice that in our daily lives,
Like-
besides keeping a gratitude journal?
Well, one way is to just make an effort to be more mindful of the people around you.
Okay.
Instead of just, rushing through your day lost in your thoughts.
Right.
Actually take a moment to acknowledge the people you encounter.
Okay.
Smile at the cashier.
Smile. Yeah.
Offer a helping hand to someone who's struggling with their bags.
Right.
Or just listen attentively when someone's talking to you.
Be present.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's so easy to get caught up in our own little world.
it is.
And forget that we're all kind of connected.
Exactly. And when you start to recognize that interconnectedness,
Yeah.
it naturally fosters a sense of compassion.
I see.
He even suggests practicing loving kindness meditation,
Oh, okay.
where you direct feelings of warmth and goodwill towards yourself and others.
I've heard of that, but I've never actually done it.
Yeah.
What is that like?
It can be as simple as, sitting quietly and repeating phrases to yourself like, may I be well,
Okay.
may I be happy. May all beings be free from suffering,
Okay.
And it might sound a little strange at first,
Little woo-woo.
little woo-woo, but there's actually growing evidence that it can increase feelings of empathy and compassion
Really?
and overall well-being.
So it's not just woo-woo. There's actual science behind it.
There's science behind it, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So we've talked about mindfulness. We've talked about gratitude, compassion, letting go of these illusions.
Right.
These all sound like kind of key ingredients to happiness.
Yeah, they're all interconnected.
But I still want like a concrete example.
Yeah.
Like, how does this actually play out in someone's life?
Okay, so let's say you're feeling stressed about a deadline at work.
Okay.
Your mind's racing, you're feeling overwhelmed, and you're tempted to just, reach for another cup of coffee
Ah,
or scroll through social media
I've been there.
to just kind of escape the pressure.
Been there many times, yeah.
So instead of reacting to that stress in that habitual way,
Right.
you could pause for a moment,
Take a breath.
take a few mindful breaths.
Yeah.
Focus on the sensation of your breath entering and leaving your body.
Be present.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that simple act can help to calm your nervous system,
Okay.
create some space between you and those racing thoughts.
So you're not denying the stress.
No, you're not denying it.
You're acknowledging.
You're acknowledging it, but you're not letting it
Run the show.
completely take over.
Kick over, yeah.
Right. And then you might shift your attention to something you're grateful for.
Okay.
Maybe it's the fact that you have a job you generally enjoy,
Okay.
or supportive colleagues,
Okay, yeah.
or even just, a warm cup of tea on your desk.
Oh, I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's like you're intentionally
Shifting your focus
shifting your focus to the good.
to the good,
Yeah.
even in the midst of a challenging situation.
Okay.
And then, you might even extend some compassion to yourself,
To yourself. Yeah.
Recognize that everyone feels stress sometimes,
Right.
and it's okay to feel that way.
Be kind to yourself.
Be kind to yourself. Exactly. Instead of beating yourself up for feeling stressed.
Which we tend to do.
We do, yeah.
Yeah.
Offer yourself some kindness and understanding.
Yeah, it's funny how we extend that to other people sometimes.
Yeah.
But not ourselves.
Not to ourselves, yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, you might remind yourself of the bigger picture.
Okay. Yeah.
Is this deadline really the end of the world?
Perspective.
Perspective, exactly.
Yeah.
Will it matter a year from now?
Right.
And just putting things into perspective can help to lessen that intensity of the stress.
I love that example because it shows how these practices aren't just these like lofty ideas.
Right.
You can actually apply them
In real life.
in real life.
Yeah.
In everyday situations.
And that's the key.
Okay.
It's not about achieving some perfect state of happiness
Right.
where we never experience stress or difficulty.
Never experience negative.
It's about developing the inner resources to meet those challenges
Yeah.
with greater awareness,
Right.
compassion, and wisdom.
I like that. Okay, so we talked about all this, but one thing I'm still curious about is this idea of interconnected happiness,
Yes.
which he talks about a lot in the book.
Yeah, he emphasizes that.
What does he mean by that? How does that fit into this whole picture?
That's a great question, and that leads us to one of the most, I think, profound and inspiring aspects of Ricard's work, which we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into 65 happiness.
Yeah, part 3,
Part 3, we're almost there.
almost there.
So last time we left off talking about, this interconnectedness of happiness.
Right.
Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting because, Ricard challenges this idea that happiness is like a solitary pursuit,
Okay.
all about me, and my own well-being.
Like, how happy can I be?
Exactly. But instead, he suggests that true happiness is actually deeply intertwined with the well-being of others.
So it's not just about me being happy, it's about contributing to the happiness of others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. He argues that we're all interconnected, like part of this vast web of life.
Right.
And our actions have this ripple effect.
Okay.
When we act with kindness, compassion, generosity,
Yeah.
it creates a more positive and harmonious environment for everyone.
Including ourselves.
Including ourselves, yeah.
Okay, but isn't there a part of human nature that's just inherently, like, self-interested?
Sure.
Like, we all want to be happy.
But Ricard argues that our own happiness is actually enhanced when we contribute to the happiness of others.
Really?
Yeah, it's not like a zero-sum game,
Okay.
where someone has to lose for someone else to win.
Right.
It's actually, studies have shown that acts of altruism and compassion actually activate reward centers in the brain.
Oh, wow.
So they actually lead to a sense of fulfillment and well-being.
So it's like helping others actually helps us too.
Yeah, it's like this beautiful cycle.
I like that.
Yeah.
What about, though, when we're struggling? Can we really be expected to be compassionate and generous when we're dealing with our own stuff?
Yeah, I mean, that's a valid point.
Yeah.
And Ricard acknowledges that, it's not always easy.
Right.
He's not saying we ignore our own needs or become martyrs or anything.
Okay.
But he does suggest that even small acts of kindness, even when we're going through tough times,
Yeah.
can have this positive impact on both ourselves and others.
So even like a smile
A smile.
or a kind word to someone.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can make a difference.
Think about a time when someone, unexpectedly showed you kindness when you're feeling down.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't lift your spirits.
Yeah.
Well, we have the power to do that for others.
Right.
And in doing so, we create this, ripple effect of positivity.
Right. It extends beyond just
That
us.
extends far beyond ourselves, yeah.
It makes me think about those like random acts of kindness stories that you
Yeah.
hear about, where someone pays for the coffee of the person behind them
Exactly.
or helps a stranger change a flat tire.
Yeah. And it might seem small,
Yeah.
but those small acts can really brighten someone's day.
And then that person might go on and do something kind for someone else.
Exactly.
Pay it forward.
And Ricard argues that if we all prioritized cultivating compassion
Yeah.
and contributing to the happiness of others,
Yeah.
it could actually transform our communities and even the world.
Wow. Okay. That's a big vision.
It is a big vision.
What about the people who don't buy into that? What about the people who are more focused on self-interest and competition?
Right. Well, Ricard doesn't shy away from that.
Yeah.
He knows it's challenging to apply these principles
In the real world?
in a world that often seems to prioritize, those things.
Right. Self-interest and competition.
Yeah.
So how do we approach that?
Well, he suggests that, we can start by embodying these qualities ourselves.
So like leading by example.
Leading by example.
Okay.
Showing others that it's possible to live with compassion and generosity, even in a world that can be tough.
Even when everyone else is kind of doing the opposite.
Exactly.
Okay, so walk the walk, basically.
Walk the walk. Yeah, and it's not about converting everyone to our way of thinking.
All right.
It's about planting those seeds of kindness and compassion
I like that, planting seeds.
wherever we go,
Okay.
trusting that those seeds will blossom.
This has been a really great deep dive.
Yeah, it's been fun.
65 Happiness.
Yeah.
Matthieu Ricard.
It's a good one.
We've covered a lot. From, happiness as a skill
Right.
to the power of mindfulness and compassion to
Yeah.
the interconnectedness of well-being
All connected.
and so much more.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I guess if I were to leave you with one takeaway from Ricard's work, it would be that true happiness isn't something we find outside ourselves.
Okay.
It's something we cultivate within
Within.
through these intentional practices and by recognizing our interconnectedness with all beings.
That's beautiful. And to our listeners, if this resonated with you, definitely check out the book,
Yeah, great.
65 Happiness. Explore some of these practices, and remember,
Yeah,
even small acts of kindness can make a world of difference.
absolutely.